Hey, I'm Will LaVeist. He's Eric Claville. You tune into LaVeist and Claville, where we give it to you straight the way it is, from a black male's perspective. Because it's like that, and that's the way it is. So let's get right to it. Continuing the next installment in our series, the Blk Tax. This is the Blk Tax, Black Fatherhood. Now, with fatherhood comes moments of both joy and pain. Did somebody say child support? But fatherhood can be particularly taxing for black dads because of the weight of negative stereotypes. The majority of black dads do the right thing by their children every day, but still have to bear the damage caused by the deadbeat brother. Black dads live under the constant stigma that all of us ain't no good and that we are destined to be absentee fathers. The stigma is so readily accepted that many single moms have been duped into, believing that they should be celebrated at Father's Day too. So this is definitely something that, is an issue that has really, as I see every Father's Day when it becomes around, I can particularly remember when I was doing my radio show, the Will LaVeist show down in Hampton, and also as a columnist, a lot of brothers would contact me and say, man, first of all, please don't write a column talking about how black men need to be responsible fathers again. Please don't write, And then, to be honest, man, when you heard President Obama, when he was in office, talking about that issue, again, we understand he had a particular situation where his father wasn't present in his life the way he should have been.
Right.
But when you keep hearing that narrative drummed over and over and over and over, that becomes the prevailing thought that this is what all black fathers are about. And the fact is, that is definitely not the case. We talked about it before, right? Claville, the studies have shown that even when the fathers are not necessarily married to the mother or not in the home with the mother and the child, it doesn't mean that they're not involved. And the most important thing is that whatever your situation is that you're involved.
Absolutely. Now, Will, I want to be, very honest and transparent about this topic because this is very near and dear to both of our hearts.
Absolutely.
Others. We've talked about our upbringing with our fathers, in our families and our family dynamics. And we know that there are many, many, many great brothers out there that are phenomenal fathers and doing the right thing.
Right. That's right.
On the other hand, though, you do have a lot of broken family, what's called broken. And again, I put that in quotations because some people take offense at the word broken and the family being broken. But there are families where there are multiple fathers in a family,
right,
where the fathers are absent. As a matter of fact, I've heard one statistic and someone say about the cards in prisons where on Mother's Day, they don't have enough cards, where inmates would like to send a card to their mother, their grandmother, or whoever they identify as their mother.
Right.
But on Father's Day, they always have cards left over, because there's not enough out there that they want to send to. So we understand that there is a dynamic that does exist.
There's dysfunction in families, sure.
Absolutely. But that is not the majority of our community.
Right. We don't have a monopoly on it, but you keep hearing over and over again, it seems like we do.
Absolutely. You see dysfunction in all ethnicity, in all families, in all groups across the board. But as you stated, this is the prevailing stereotype that you keep hearing. The narrative is perpetuated in popular culture. You hear it in popular music. Now, again, this is the experience of one individual that's making a song about it and is being popularized across the whole community. But we have to understand, even in our popular culture, that song is just not being heard in that studio on that particular download. Or if you're of our generation, that tape or that CD, or that radio tune. But it's being heard across the world. And then that's the idea, the concept that people start to get of Black fathers. But we both know that that's not the case.
I think that the key that's important that people understand is that the decline in marriages, right? We know 50% of marriages end in divorce.
Absolutely.
But those numbers have affected all groups. We hear that 70% of Black children born out of wedlock. That's high. We're not excusing that, and we say that those fathers that are not doing right by their children are absolutely, there's no excuse for that.
Right. Now, Will, let's define the word wedlock, because we understand that that's a proper English term, but
right, go ahead.
Because individuals may not understand what a wedlock is.
Go ahead, go for it.
So wedlock simply means that there's a child that's born where the father is not married to the mother, or we find that the father has not claimed the child. So the paternity of the child itself has not been itself determined. So that's what we mean by wedlock.
Right. And so we found that being born out of wedlock does not automatically equate to the father not being involved. And so there's been studies, we talked about it on this show, indicating that Black fathers are involved at a higher level than other men in other groups. So what does that say? It doesn't deny that we have dysfunction in families. All families have dysfunctions across the group. But
right.
what's the problem is for fathers like you and I is that we have to bear this extra burden, like as if we have some monopoly on it. And one of the things that has been particularly challenging for me, I remember in raising my children, particularly in raising my two sons, is that when you're in a community and they have friends whose fathers may not be in a household, right?
Right.
Unlike when you and I grew up, where there were more fathers in the household, there was a more likelihood that you left your own home where maybe your father was getting on your back about something legitimately. It was parenting, right? But you didn't like the way that felt. You would go to your friend's house where there would be a father who was doing the same thing to your friend, right? So you got a chance to go from one household to another household and see that a lot of what was going on in your home, a lot of times in terms of how your father was bringing that male energy to you, was not out of the ordinary. But in this generation, as you've got more divorces, again, across the board, you have more likelihood where that father may not be in the home and may not have that kind of ongoing interaction with their children the way it was for you and I raising our sons, raising our children, right? So oftentimes that saying about it takes a village to raise a child, indeed it does, because you want your child to be able to go out of your household into another household where the things that he's learning or she's learning in that household, your household, are being reinforced elsewhere. But if he's got a friend and got several friends who now he's going in their household, he's not seeing a dad around, they're not getting he's not getting maybe that kind of pushback that he would get from me as a father. Now all of a sudden in his mind, he starts feeling like, well, maybe there's some benefits to this, old guy not being around, getting on my back about my chores, getting on my back about my schoolwork, getting on my back about quote unquote being responsible. And so those are one of the issues that, for us who have been in the home and been engaged, it creates a black tax, a challenging tax.
You're right. It's funny you mention that because you're past this stage that I'm about to talk about, but
right.
we're in that teenage stage where peer pressure is a lot greater now because
that's right.
You're learning yourself, you're wanting to see what's cool, and you're not that time of building your confidence. This is time that teenagers are in, so you're easily influenced no matter who you are, right? So what ends up happening is that, like you said, you want more freedom. You want more opportunity to do certain things.
Natural.
Look, your friends can stay out, but you got to be home by 11, 12 o'clock. You're like, well, why? It's like, well, such and such parents such don't have to do that. And the I remember I said that one time, I think to my dad, and his statement sealed it. And I never said that again. He said, "Look, what they do in their house is what they do. What I do is what we do. And that's what you gonna obey."
What goes on in the place where you eat, sleep, and are clothed is what you're going to adhere to. That's right. And that's
with that.
Yeah, and that's that kind of male energy that I'm talking about, that you get accustomed to, right? And as you go from one house to another house, or you go into the barber shop and you see it, and you learn that kind of energy, that kind of being spoken to in that way, that's not meant to break you down and destroy you. You just realize that this is how older men speak. There's a chain of command here. There's a respect for your elders that you have. And a lot of times what we did is we listened to our dad, let him have his say. And as we got older, when there were certain things that we wanted to do anyway, we went and did it anyway. But we didn't give him the back talk and all of that.
Right.
We respected the energy that he was bringing.
And you knew not to give him the back talk.
Right. You knew not to, because it's going to be futile, because you might end up, having a pretty fat lip to go to school with the next morning. Right. So what happens is that when young men, and I think we will see or have seen it, there may be research to back this up, where a lot of young men who have come up who have not been accustomed to that kind of male energy and engagement, right? If they didn't get that, still those boundaries, those firm boundaries from the mother, right? Now, when they are confronted with an older male, or they are confronted, whether it's in a workplace or whatever the case it may be, now a lot of times they get caught up in their feelings about certain things. And now they are reacting, without a good high level of emotional intelligence, which you need, particularly as a Black male, to navigate successfully in this society. You need to be able to be self-aware, to be able to keep your emotions under control, to be able to recognize when to strike, when not to strike, when to be quiet, when to speak. And if you don't have that kind of, again, male energy that you've become accustomed to, you don't know how to read it. And then when someone who's older does try to speak into your life as a mentor and so forth, there's conflict. This person, he's trying to break me down. He not respecting me. It's not about that at all. It's about how men tend to engage, which is different than how women tend to engage. And there's nothing wrong with either one.
Right. And Will, you bring up a very important dynamic that we're starting to see and going to see in the future. Mm-hmm. Now that we find that engagement, that mentorship, right, with older males, with younger males. Now there's a different type of engagement that we're going to start seeing within relationships. So how will that play out? And how will now the father, which now would be the grandfather,
right,
role will he now play, in those type of relationships? So let's just say you and I, for an example, pretty soon we're going to be grandfathers. I mean, you're already there, but what I mean, grandfathers where adults will start to come to you for seeking advice.
Right,
and
right.
They're going to start to see you as being that major male figure, being able to handle situations the way that our fathers taught us, the way that we learned how to handle situations. And there's a difference. There's going to be a difference. And we haven't quite experienced it yet. But now we have the young fathers who were young men, and we have the older grandfathers that are handling the situation different. So how is that grandchild? How is that spouse of the now young man is going to judge how that situation should be handled?
Right. And the other interesting thing is that you got a lot of families where the grandparents have had to step in and raise the children. So it's interesting how now that older grandfather, right, who has passed certain stages, certain station in life, and things have changed, but then the society that he's now interacting in is very different from when he grew up. So it brings out something that I saw even as I was raising my children, is how a lot of the things from my upbringing, right, was not immediately transferable over to them because of the environment was different, the age in terms of them being growing up in a digital age and all of the information and all of the things that come with that. And so some of the sayings that I might use that I got from my dad, they didn't automatically transfer over directly. So
Right.
it's important. You bring up an important point. These changes are going to be important. The other thing, man, again, about why it's a black tax on black fathers, because these kinds of stereotypes, it's like single parenthood and being a single mother, that's like nothing new. That's something that has been going on since the beginning of time. That's something that has been going on in our society. And mothers have had to raise young men. And I can remember, being from divorced parents. Like I said, my father wasn't in the household, and not being in the household is a major difference. There are major moments for interaction, for little lessons that happen that don't happen if your dad is not there. My dad was still involved and engaged, but there were certain moments where he's not there. Well, my mother still had the mindset of, look, son, you a boy, you a male. You need to be a man, So she was still engaging with me on having me reach these high levels of being a man. And then there were certain things that she felt that I needed to engage with my father on. And she would say, you need to engage with your father with that.
Well, that's totally different from what we see today, though.
That's what I'm getting at. I'm getting at is that for a lot of times, I've got a lot of black male friends coming up as a parent who will talk about, the conflicts that they have with the mothers and how the mothers oftentimes are playing roles of undermining that relationship. And they're not understanding that it's at the disadvantage of their own son. So, where you had older women, again, older school women who valued working in the house as well as working outside the home and had certain traditional values around some things. They valued, look, certain things as a son, you need to deal with your father. And even though I'm not feeling your father in this area, I'm not liking him here, you need to deal with him with that. Well, now we've sort of come into an age, we got a lot of women that are like, well, I don't really need a man. And even to the point where they want to be celebrated on Father's Day. I mean, when do you remember somebody talking about that back in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s? When did that's something that started to come into fruition like 90s, like 2000s? Now you start to see Hallmark cards for women that want to be celebrated on Father's Day. So these are the kinds of things we had to create, a black tax.
And Will, you bring up a controversial point.
Well, it is what it is, right?
Because some would say that women are doing the job of both a mother and a father. But I would argue and say that women are doing double the mother side or double the duty as a parent.
There you go.
Because there's a difference in being a mother and a difference in being a father. So yes, they are doing double duty if you're in a single parent house. And for the men, there are some men who are raising children by themselves because of the circumstances.
Right. If you look up the history of how Father's Day became a recognized thing or holiday, it was because of a single father whose daughter so appreciated him and how he was as a father, right? Single father said there ought to be a day to acknowledge fathers. So otherwise, that's how Father's Day became Father's Day. It wasn't that he was a single father, so she was saying, well, he's mommy too. No, like you said, there's a difference between the roles, and we need to acknowledge and celebrate both of those roles.
Absolutely. And I was going to say that I was going to use a personal example when I said that there are fathers that are raising children by themselves. The Lord saw fit to take our mother from us when I was 14, 15. So I'm in the middle of 7 children, and my mother and father, born to them, were 7 children. 3 older were out of the house. And then my brother and I were in high school. Our twin sisters were in elementary school at 6 years old. And the Lord saw fit to take our mother. And my father raised us for some time by himself until the Lord blessed him to marry our stepmother, who's they've been together and raised the rest of the children for over 30 years now. So, so I saw a single father that went to work, that got the kids off to school, that helped with prepare the breakfast. And I will say this, my father takes a little long to prepare breakfast, so it's better if you want to make the bus. Don't worry about it, Dad, I'll eat that stuff. But he prepared the breakfast. He was also my sister's PTA school president. He was also involved. Before our mother passed, he was our Boy Scout and Cub Scout leader, our Tiger Cub for my little brother, Cub Scouts for me. He was also engaged. We had a family-owned business. He had a job, and at the time, being a deacon of the church before he became an elder. Right. So, still doing all of that as a single father. Yeah, keeping it rolling. All right, and still dealing with the grief of losing, his first wife, our mother. So, there are fathers that are out now. He wasn't our mother. He couldn't do that. Right. And he understood that he couldn't do that, which is why at the time when we had a man-to-man conversation, he prayed and asked the Lord to bless him with another wife. Right. And he wanted to do it in a way that was proper, because he was a family man. Right. So it's those type of examples that I just gave that goes against the stereotype. Right. That's pushed down our throats, right? So when we talk about celebrating Father's Day, let's celebrate fathers. Absolutely. Those fathers that do double duty, celebrate them double duty. On Mother's Day, those mothers that do double duty, we'll celebrate them double on Mother's Day. Absolutely. I mean, that your example of your dad is, a beautiful example of what I'm talking about. We'll celebrate his 80th birthday at the end of this month. Yeah, I mean, that's a blessing, and I understand. I understand the children who would want to acknowledge their mom in that way and acknowledge the fact that they're saying, my mom has really been a super mom. And also in there, you're going to hear some pain about the fact that the father is not involved. And there are many reasons why a father may not be involved. It could be death that could have happened. It's not always a case of a father just being irresponsible. It could be drugs. It could be mental health issues. It could be a multitude of things that legitimately keep that person from being away beyond that person's control. You see, so I definitely understand the emotion and the desire in there to say, I really want to recognize my mom because my mom was a fantastic woman. She's done a great job in raising me, particularly as a male or as a young woman. But as you said, mothers are mothers, fathers are fathers. And let's not try to make a positive statement about something, a legitimate positive statement about something, but create another negative. Because for me, as a father who was very involved and very much stood the test of the trials and tribulations that came along with that, I want to be acknowledged for that effort that I put in, and then I did. And I very much get annoyed when I hear of brothers who could be as involved, who could be engaged, who are not held up by some barrier, some insurmountable barrier, a huge barrier that's stopping them from being involved in their children. And those who aren't, I mean, they should absolutely be ashamed of themselves, man. And because they should recognize that you're hurting that child. You're hurting that child that you helped bring into the world and whom your DNA is still impacting that child every day. Well, matter of fact, I was just about to comment on that. You and I both, we talked about fatherhood in another setting and other segment and how beautiful it is. I think, that's one of the top titles that I hold near and dear, to my heart and that I carry. And we'll always carry that label the rest of our lives. That's a beautiful thing. I even talked about how, Psalms 127 talks about, how children are a heritage unto the Lord, and also how, our children is like arrows in the hand of a mighty archer, and that we are the fathers of the glory of our children. Mm-hmm. So if you take away the father out of the house, you take away the father out of the child's life. If you take away the father, you take away the glory of the children. And for men who are not, that don't understand the value of being a father, they don't understand the beauty of being a father, they don't understand the benefits of being a father, you're missing out. You are missing out.
Absolutely.
You are missing out. I mean, it's one of the most blessed things that you can be, because, there's not many things in life you can see that is duplicate of you.
That's right.
And you and I, we talked about how our kids, we see the good.
Yeah. So sometimes you get worried. You're like, oh man, I don't want him to duplicate that. Yeah. You get worried. But I tell you, the other thing, because your point is spot on. The other thing that I think brothers have to realize is how important it is for us to be fathers to others, to be fathers, role models to our children's friends. I'm telling you, man, two of the most greatest blessings that I've gotten in my life. One was a couple of years ago, and one was just recently. Was one of my son's closest friends, right? And one happened a couple of years ago. One of his friends graduated from Virginia Union. And before graduating, he pledged a fraternity, a Mega Psi Phi fraternity, which one of my brothers happens to be a member, but I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma. Well, I'm the one that I was friends with his father, and I'm the one that talked to him a lot about fraternities and college and encouraged him to go to college. Well, he calls me up on the day that he crossed, which happened to be my birthday, and he wanted me there to witness him coming out and crossing. I made it my business to be there. He asked me and then told me later, man, because, he appreciated how much of a father on the side that I had been to him. And with his father, reinforcing the things that he was learning in his household or the conflicts that he might have had with his dad. He come to me and he's talking about, and I'm being a peace builder and helping him to understand where his dad is coming from. The other one just happened just recently. Another friend of one of my sons was in the house a whole lot. He just recently had a son, and I called him. I heard he had a son. I called him and congratulate him. He tells me, "Pop," which is what he's called me. He said, "Man, I never said this to you, but I really appreciate you and how you treated me like a son. And even when I had conflicts with my dad, because he had a relationship with his dad in the house, he said there's a lot of times my dad said things and did things that I didn't really understand, right? But you helped me to understand what he was doing. And now that I have a son, I understand my father much more. And I have you to thank for that." Again, man, those are just two major blessings in my life, just to know that, again, people watch what you do and how you interact and how you behave. And as men, we need to understand that we can be fathers and we can help support other fathers by being, role models for children that aren't biologically our own. And that's a responsibility as well.
Well, I think that's a great way to end this segment. I mean, that was a beautiful story because it showed that, just living your life, understanding the value of being a father, but also understanding the Black tax that's on it.
That's right.
The extra, that goes into us doing what we do. Being a father is hard enough. Being a parent is hard enough. But when you add the additional pressures of life, given who we are in this country at this time period in man's time, it becomes even more extraordinary to hear your story. So I celebrate you.
Hey, celebrate you, bro. And celebrate all the fathers out there that are doing right by their children every day.
Absolutely. And look, you couldn't have said it better. So with that, we want to thank all of you for joining us for this segment of LaVeist and Claville as we talk about Black tax, Black fatherhood. the beauty of it, and also the struggle. But at the end, it is worth it. Continue to like, share, and follow us on our Facebook page and our social media. Let us know how we're doing. If you have a question, please let us know. Until next time, to us, that's the way it is. We'll see you. Be well.